Good morning. So today the topic to be discussed is biodiversity conservation. Now we already know what is actually biodiversity conservation, isn't it? That means we have been studying in our last classes regarding the different types of biodiversity, the different places which are rich in flower and animals. So all these biodiversities are to be conserved. Then various reasons are also there due to which biodiversity is getting lost. Okay, so for that reason what happened, actually their conservation is very much essential. Now why actually this conservation is important? First of all, we get the narrow utilitarian region. Narrow utilitarian region, it includes, that means the humans which derive the benefits from the biodiversity, that is due to the plants and animals. Actually large number of economically useful things can be obtained, like food, then cereals, pulses, milk, meat, egg, fats, oil, fibers, firewood, timber. All these things actually that we obtain are the comes under narrow utilitarian uses. Okay, so these narrow utilitarian things are important, so biodiversity is to be conserved. Then the next is the broadly utilitarian. Broadly utilitarian means the fundamentals of ecosystem, the different fundamentals to ecosystem services of nature, like oxygen, pollination, climate regulation. All these things, these are controlled naturally by the biodiversity, which are not man-made. That's why for these also actually the biodiversity is to be conserved. And third is the ethical issues. Ethical issues, it includes the humans, which now actually what happened, when we people were evolved, at that time only the different types of plants and animals have also started evolving. So for that purpose also, and for legally and ethically also, it is necessary to conserve the biodiversity. Now many plants and animals are considered as a national flower, national bird, national animal, isn't it? So besides that also, actually from our moral we have to protect them so that they are not at all destroyed. Now for conservation, actually some strategies are to be taken. The first is the in situ conservation. Okay, in situ conservation means the protection in its natural habitat. When we are protecting the plant or the animal in its natural habitat, then it is known as the in situ conservation. Now in situ conservation consists of two parts, that is, one is hotspot and other is the protected area. Hotspot means actually the areas which have high number of species. Okay, large number of species are there, very richness is there, so that particular areas are called hotspot. And when there are more and more species, that means it is very much essential to conserve them. Okay, then next is the protected areas. Protected areas means what? Actually there are some particular areas which have to be properly protected so that the biodiversity has to be safe. Okay, like for example, actually some particular areas are designated for protection, like the national park. The national park, that is the area which is considered by the government so that here the wildlife is properly protected and no other outside activities are allowed. Okay, for example, plantation, cultivation, felling of trees, these are not at all allowed. Private ownership is not allowed. Only then plants or the animals, they are strictly present in that area and they are purely safe there. Okay, those are known as the national parks. Now for example, the Kaziranga National Park. Then next comes the sanctuaries. Sanctuaries means what happened? Actually these are also areas where the flora and fauna is protected, but here private ownership is also permitted, and plus the collection of some forest products are also allowed. Okay, as compared to national parks, actually here some activities are allowed. So this is the sanctuary, like the Bornadi sanctuary. Then next is the biosphere reserve. Biosphere reserve, this is more open area. Okay, so large areas are taken into consideration where plants, animals are protected. Along with them, actually what happened, some extra activities are going on, like forestry, agriculture, all these activities are going on. So that particular areas are called biosphere reserve. Now actually these areas are properly conserved or designated by the map of UNESCO, that is Man and Biosphere Reserve. Okay. Now in India, the first biosphere reserve was Nilgiri Biosphere Reserve. Now a biosphere reserve actually it consists of 3 zones. Now this is strictly meant for protection, isn't it? So for protection actually we are dividing this area into 3 particular zones. One is called the core zone. Core zone means the central part where no activity is allowed. Buffer zone, the area next to the core zone, but here some activities are allowed. Some activities like research works, educational work, awareness, these are allowed. And transition zone, this is the outermost area where some tribal peoples can live there or they can do cultivations. Okay. So in accordance with the cooperation of the local people and tribes, some activities and settlements take place in the transition zone. So these are the main protected areas, the national parks, sanctuaries and biosphere reserve, which are strictly meant for biodiversity conservation. These are the in situ conservation. Now while we are studying the protected areas, we come across the word sacred groves. Sacred groves means what happens, some patches of the forest which are rich in biodiversity or which are rich for some particular species, those areas are worshipped. It consists of some particular plants and these are worshipped, and when they are worshipped, that means here no activities like cutting etc. can take place. So these are called the sacred groves. Okay, that means in very simple words, patches of forest around a worship place. Now suppose the people tree, the banyan tree, okay, or some like that type of large plants which are being worshipped. So those plants are strictly that particular area where worship takes place, where people worship the plants, that particular areas are called the sacred groves. For example, in Meghalaya, the Khasi and Jaintia hills are sacred groves. Okay. Next is the sacred lakes. Sacred lakes means what happened here also some water bodies are worshipped by some peoples, actually not all, but some peoples worship the water bodies also, and there what happened when they are considering it as a place to be worshipped, so here all the aquatic flora and fauna are protected without exploitation, like the Pushkar Lake in Rajasthan. Now, after the in situ conservation, we come to the ex situ conservation. Ex situ conservation means the conservation that takes place outside the natural habitat. That means for some endangered, endemic species or like that, we collect them and preserve them or conserve them in some artificial habitats like botanical gardens, zoological gardens, in our home gardens, gene banks, aquaria, cryopreservation, etc. So different strategies are taken for the ex situ conservation. Now cryopreservation word we get here, that means the preservation that is done in completely cold conditions. Okay, in liquid nitrogen normally the genes or seeds are preserved for longer time. So that particular thing is known as the cryopreservation part. So all these strategies are very much important. Again, sorry, the Ramsar site. Ramsar site means the site for, that is the preservation of wetlands. Okay, first actually it was done in Ramsar, so that's why the name Ramsar site came. Now all these things are very much essential for the biodiversity conservation. Now there are many strategies which are taken in India also, outside also many biosphere protection act are there. So all these I will give it to you. So go through them, and even in the books also very clearly mentioned. It will be better if you go through the books and study them properly. Okay, the names, the year, their main conservation act, strategies, what are they conserving actually, what is the main plant or animal that is present there for which that particular area is under conservation program. So all these things are very much important. So go through them, and finally with this we conclude this chapter. Okay, and regarding this chapter, if you are having anything, any doubt, any problem, then please do consult.